games with the most horrific bosses to the games with the most disturbing character backstories we've been able to witness. The story of Lisa Trevor and the Trevor family tops any of the other Resident Evil backstories in many people's eyes. But not in a positive way. This is one of the most depressing tales of any game out there. Lisa Trevor was born in the year 1953 to an architect and her dad, George Trevor, and his wife, her mother Jessica. Lisa's dad, George, owned a really popular construction firm which specialized in eccentric and elaborate building designs. From 1964 to 1967, the company was tasked with building the elaborate Spencer Mansion in the Arklay Mountains, with Trevor herself being immortalized in its design as a wall painting in its gallery. Upon the completion of this mansion, the client Oswald E. Spencer invites them to said mansion as his guest. At the time, George was too busy and wasn't able to go, so his daughter Lisa and his wife Jessica went by themselves. Jessica drove with Lisa to said mansion and was immediately detained by two security guards. Both mother and child were taken to an underground inside the mansion into some sort of chamber. In the meantime, George is handling business and other things with his career, and soon after, talks with Spencer, who says that his wife and daughter went off to see his Aunt Emma, who was sick. George buys the story and ends up going inside to have dinner with Spencer, all while not knowing that his family is kidnapped under him and going through tortures and experiments of virus injections. Most specifically, they are being injected with two strains of the progenitor virus, a virus that attacks the cells of a human being in an attempt to modify them, causing strange results in those tested. This can be fatal or really affect its victims forever. Over the next couple of days, both mom and daughter were subject to more testing. Then Lisa's mom, Jessica Trevor, plans for an escape, but sadly her reactions to the virus weren't what Spencer wanted, and she was considered a useless guinea pig, therefore being executed before she had the chance to escape. One can only imagine the pain Lisa must have felt while still being captured and knowing that her mother had been killed by the same people. As time goes on, Lisa starts to react to the injections and happens to gain a superhuman-like strength, while at the same time her mental state just kept getting worse. Mainly due to the loss of her mother, but coupled with the fact that she is kidnapped and being actively tortured, obviously it didn't help her sanity at all. In an attempt to keep her sane and calm, a Spencer employee began impersonating her mother Jessica. Although it didn't really succeed at all, in fact it only enraged Lisa, who attempted to cut her face off to give it to her mother, because she thought the impersonator had stolen her mother's face. Already a signal of how rough in shape Lisa's mentality was. Due to all those injections and also being locked in such a small space for so long, no one to talk to, and unaware of the status of her father and what was really going to happen to her inside that place. Truly a nightmare. As the days went on, Lisa's mental situation progressively gets worse and worse, as well as her body, and she is able to briefly escape out of her small space contained room in the lab. She writes all of this down in her journal, and she mentions, the story now continues onto her adulthood. Over the next 28 years, Lisa remained beneath the chamber and was moved into the Arklay lab upon its completion. Her existence was kept a secret within the company, and even some employees didn't know her name. She was chained to a bed and fed through intravenous therapy, which basically means they had a tube that went into her vein, and that tube took food in the form of fluid into her bloodstream. At this point, Lisa isn't even recognizable anymore. In the year 1995, Lisa was considered too much of a hazard for the employees, because she had an obsession with killing and collecting women's faces, which would obviously be such a danger to the female employees there. And following the death of 3 female researchers, the executives had enough and used the Umbrella Security Service to execute her. 3 years later, she was declared deceased. What they didn't know was that her ability had reached such a level that she was able to fully recover from the dead. Lisa's suffering and maltreatment turned out to make her basically immortal. Bullets were pretty much useless, and she could absorb any damage and keep moving forward, which of course is very dangerous. Later on, Lisa finds her way back to the mansion with the task of finding her mother's corpse. She makes some of the underground tunnels and chambers where she was initially tortured. So she went back to the place where she was kidnapped and made that her home. I mean, how crazy. Then 3 years later, after that, the Star Squad arrives, and this is where the gameplay comes in. In Resident Evil HD Remastered, you go down a ladder into some sort of underground cavern where you happen to find Lisa. Then you push these chain rocks that hold the stone coffin shut, and that reveals what Lisa had been looking for, her mother's dead corpse. But Lisa isn't dead here. She later continues going after Albert Wesker, who she recognized as one of the people that tortured her when she was a child. Lisa continues to go after Wesker and they fight it out. Then at some point, Lisa is hit by a falling chandelier which brought Wesker enough time to escape as the mansion exploded with Lisa inside. And that is how Lisa Trevor actually died. She didn't die when she discovered her mother's corpse. She actually died when the chandelier pinned her down and the mansion exploded. And that is the story of Lisa Trevor and the kidnapping and all the torture she had to go through and her eventual death. Truly one of the most depressing, one of the most intimidating and disturbing backstories of any character ever in any video game. There's only a handful of these, and this one is truly one that we'll never forget.